The Democratic Party has come to a crossroads. We're not going to shy away from it. We're going to talk about it. In fact, we're going to do a pretty deep dive into this moment in time. Also, the Trump administration is ignoring federal judicial orders, and Elon Musk is trying to buy up a state Supreme Court for the benefit of Tesla. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54. Just like last week, before we jump in, Ravi, you got some live appearances, including one with me coming up. Let's tell the people about it, and then we'll talk, about what's going on.
Yes, sir. So my novel's coming out on Tuesday, the 25th. So that's this coming Tuesday. You can pre-order it now wherever you get your books. It's called Garbage Town. And we have some events, one in Manhattan. I'm doing a conversation on March 27th with Max Rose in the Lower East Side, March 30th in Staten Island, and March 31st with you in St. Louis. It looks like they're going to be hitting capacity really soon based on what we could see. So get your ticket now so you don't get pushed to overflow for those of you in St. Louis. And we're getting pretty fast capacity in Manhattan as well. So order those tickets, pre-order the book, and I'm excited to see you in Missouri. Jason, we haven't done a public event since the heart of the pandemic.
Yeah. Congrats on all the, we'll talk politics here, but congrats on all the awesome reviews. Congrats on selling out all these appearances. Okay. What's going on?
Well, people are not happy with Chuck Schumer. Let's start with by allowing the man himself to state his case. This is him on the Chris Hayes show.
What I'm saying is that all of those things you enumerated, which all sound like good politics to me, are the kinds of things that you'd be doing if Mitt Romney were president. That, there's this weird asymmetry right now, which is that they are acting in this totally new way, in which they are ambitiously trying to seize all power and create a presidential dictatorship in the United States of America. And the Democratic opposition is acting like, well, if we can get their approval rate down a few points, then what? What happens?
Well, what happens is, look, first, we get it way down. He's going to have much less. This worked in 2017. You say it didn't. Now it's a different government.
It's different, though.
It is different. But healthcare, we beat him. Taxes, we beat him. And guess what we did? Guess what we did, Chris? We took back the House and won in the Senate, and then we were allowed to do all those good things. This is not the only tactic. We have to stand strong in certain instances and not give them the votes at all. But there are instances with this. The two work together.
Okay.
Jason, I was curious to see where you came down on this debate. I'm assuming that the audience is generally familiar with the contours of what's going on here, but what?
Yeah, why don't we do this? Give him the contours, then let's watch the clip of him, responding to the criticism, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what I think, and we can talk about what each other thinks, and then we'll see what AOC and others are saying. But lay it out for them, Ravi, if they don't know.
Yeah, and here's a summary from our friends over at Tangle. So on Saturday, Trump signed a stopgap bill to fund the government through September and avert a shutdown. The bill, which was called a continuing resolution, so many people, hear people talk about the CR. It had a Senate vote of 54 to 46, with 2 Democrats voting in favor of it and 1 Republican voting against it, who's Rand Paul. Prior to the vote, the Senate invoked cloture, 62 to 38, which essentially was the real vote on this, right? Whoever wound up voting for it in the end is less relevant than the fact that a significant amount of Democrats, I think 8 Democrats, 8 or 9, allowed this bill to be voted on, knowing that it would pass. And so essentially, you need this cloture in order to get this kind of bill passed. There are certain other types of bills where you only need 50 votes, but we don't need to, go into the details here.
This is basically how you avoid a filibuster. It's a thing we've been talking about for years.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I think people are mad at Schumer because he initially signaled that Democrats would block this bill, but he later changed course and said that, basically has been saying, hey, the worst outcome here would be if we shut down the government and Trump and Elon Musk would be able to furlough tons of federal employees and achieve Doge more aggressively faster than anybody could have expected. That's his rationale. And as you alluded to, while he was on this Hayes interview, Hayes played a bunch of clips of Democrats criticizing him for this move.
Look, Chuck and I disagreed as it relates to the approach and outcome.
I think there is a deep sense of outrage and betrayal. And this is not just about progressive Democrats. This is across the board, the entire party.
I still support Senator Schumer as leader, but I think the only way that we are going to be effective as a caucus is if we change our tactics.
I would have liked to see, when Chuck Schumer had leverage here, to say we need A, B, C, and D for the Democratic Party, and force the Republicans to meet him halfway on those issues.
I myself don't give away anything for nothing. And I think that's what happened the other day.
They said, okay, he said leverage, I think it was the governor.
And Nancy Pelosi said, I myself don't give away anything for nothing. I think that's what happened
The only
the other
leverage we had, they weren't going to negotiate with us. So there were two choices only. It would be nice if we had a third choice. We tried to get that third choice with the 30-day extension that Patty Murray tried to get some more moderate Republicans on the Appropriations Committee go along. They wouldn't. So we were faced only the Senate, not the House. They had a little easier because they could vote no against the CR and not cause a shutdown. Right. But in the Senate, the only two choices were these choices, period.
Okay. Leaders exist, both when it comes to political leadership positions like Senate minority leader or majority leader, manager of a team, a baseball team, coach of a football team, whatever. They exist to be in charge until it's no longer time for them to be in charge. And there's also this thing that exists like in the world of entrepreneurship and in the business world that I think also we overlook how often it exists in the political world, which is founder syndrome, which is oftentimes the person who got you launched, the person who got the product or the company off the ground or the effort or the movement off the ground is not always the right person to continue to lead through every single scenario. And have you had that? You've spent some time with Schumer, probably, Ravi?
Yeah, not a ton. I mean, I've sat through a bunch of his commencement addresses because he gives the same commencement address wherever he goes. So he gave my commencement address in Binghamton, and then my mother, who graduated from college after me, a year later, I sat in the audience as he delivered the same commencement address for her. So those are my main experiences with him. And then he spoke at one of my graduations from law school. I attended like 3 graduations because it took me forever to graduate. So I used to attend all the graduations of all the kids who
That's funny, yeah.
who graduated, including his daughter, who is in one of those classes. So I think he gave that commencement address. So those are my experiences with Chuck Schumer.
Well, that's a pretty good analogy for what I'm about to say, because I have spent a lot of time personally with Schumer. I mean, he was trying to become Senate Majority Leader in 2016 when I was running, for Senate, and I was in one of the races that he needed in order to become Majority Leader, and so I got the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him, but I can't say I got to know him well, because I got to know how he works well, but you don't really get to know him well. I mean, Chuck Schumer is a political animal. And so I have been witness to the things that are lore. I've been with him in a car many times when he's taking call after call on his flip phone. I've sat with him and seen him do his moves like repetitively over and over again. I've heard him give me the same one-on-one talk. And I won't say not knowing that he's given it to me before. I would say not caring that he's given it to me before, just being like, this is the thing I say in this moment, and so you're going to listen. And I've had him give me, oftentimes very good advice, but the same advice. He has a playbook, and he has a way he does things, and a way that he has done things for a long time. And in a lot of cases, many cases, that's been extremely effective. When it comes to understanding how to wield power in a legislative body, understanding how to use the levers of power to be a really effective incumbent senator in a place like New York, there's just about nobody better. But I think it is clear that the limits of his capacities are starting to become very evident, and they are operating in the modern era where wins and losses don't really happen on the floor of the Senate necessarily. They can, but they're oftentimes, especially in an environment where you control nothing in Washington, the relative sense of winning is going to come from winning at the polls, winning in the media battles, winning in the court of public opinion. And that's very hard to get an innate, organic sense of when you interact with the world IRL, because you got a flip phone and you don't do social media. You don't see the way things are playing out for Gen Z, for millennials, or even for Generation X in a lot of ways. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is the limits of those abilities. Now, that said, look, he probably ended up where he had to end up from the beginning. I mean, if you're being real about it, right? Like, what he's saying is true, that if you shut down the government, you're going to allow Doge to go on steroids, and they're going to do a lot more damage. But you do have leverage if you are willing to potentially take that step, and if you can make people believe that you are. And they started to, and then it's just sort of, I don't know that he could have got a different outcome, but I know that he could have managed expectations a lot differently. And I know that he could have won the battle in the court of public opinion in a much more significant way. But I just don't think he came close to that at all.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge that, like, anybody who claims that this was an easy answer,
Right.
I think is misleading you.
He just looked out of his depth.
Yeah, like, even though I would not have voted for cloture, and I would not have done what Schumer did. I don't want to pretend like this was easy, or that if you would take my path, that it would be a surefire better outcome. Like, we're talking about two really bad outcomes here. I'll outline like my rationale for why I disagree with Schumer in a second, but I think AOC is probably the most prominent and persuasive voice for the position that I'm outlining here. So let's go to her.
I think, well, first and foremost, the American people, if anyone has held a town hall or has seen what has been happening in town halls, American people, whether they are Republicans, independents, Democrats, are up in arms about Elon Musk and the actual gutting of federal agencies across the board. This continuing resolution codifies much of this chaos that Elon Musk is wreaking havoc on the federal government. It codifies many of those changes. It sacrifices and completely eliminates congressional authority in order to review these impulsive Trump tariffs that he's switching on and off. And on top of that, for folks who are concerned about effectiveness in government, this Republican extreme spending bill removes all of the guardrails and all of the accountability measures to ensure that money is being spent in the way that Congress has directed for it to be spent. This turns the federal government into a slush fund for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It sacrifices congressional authority, and it is deeply partisan. And so to me, it is almost unthinkable why Senate Democrats would vote to hand the few pieces of leverage that we have away for free when we've been sent here to protect Social Security, protect Medicaid, and protect Medicare.
Yeah, it's perfectly said. And it makes me want to clarify something I said. Like, I think he came to the conclusion that as leader, he had to get to that place. It doesn't mean that, like you, I'm not sure he's right about that, because yes, it is true that it probably makes it easier for them to go about doing some of the damage they're doing, but it is hard to convince me that they're not going to get to that place anyway. So if you can make them own a government shutdown in the meantime, and I mean, there's almost no better way to illustrate the chaos that is this administration than they control everything and they can't keep the government open.
Yeah, it's like if you show up to high school and this bully comes after you, right? And the question is, do you let them take your lunch money on day one, or do you make them kick the shit out of you on
Right.
day one, and then signal to them, all right, every time, first of all, find out whether you could fight back, like you could find out. Two is find out whether they have the energy to kick the shit out of you every single day or not, or whether your very resistance to them signals something that maybe it's not worth it. My problem here is that they took our lunch money on day one, essentially.
Right.
So what is day 2 going to look like? What is day 30 going to look like? What is September going to look like? You know, you extended this to September. what does this tell the Republican Party about what they can get away with between now and then? So I think the obvious answer from the Schumer camp is that there are real people at risk here. Stipulated, we all agree that there are real like recipients of this funding, and obviously none of us wants to see anybody's funding cut. The question is, what is the most effective way to pick a really important fight that we didn't want, right? We didn't want any of this. Like, we're going to have a fight today. We're going to have a fight every day of this administration. Nobody's pretending like this is going to be easy, but there is no answer. Like, when Schumer sounds very persuasive, I've read his New York Times article, like when he talks about everything, the thing he cannot answer is what is going to be different the next time they come back to you to take your lunch money. Like, there is no answer to that.
What I think the AOC clip demonstrates is something that we've all talked about and known has been coming for a long time. And frankly, this is not something I'm saying specifically about Chuck Schumer. Like, like Chuck Schumer had at times been really good to me. I don't have anything against Chuck Schumer. And he's also at times been a very effective leader for the Democrats. But when I ran for the Senate in 2016, I ran with every commercial we did and every speech we did ending saying that it's time for a new generation of leadership. And look, obviously at the time I was talking about me, but it's something that I believed anyway. I mean, and it's something I still believe. And I think that this just really illustrates it. I mean, when you look at the difference between the way that was articulated by AOC and the way Schumer is stuck in a position where he's having to defend institutions, he's basically in, it's like when I first started training in the Army, we were training on tactics that were World War II, Vietnam, Korea tactics. They were conventional tactics that were, for being in the jungle, being in Europe, being on the Korean Peninsula, and force on force, conventional fights. And then by the time a few years later, I had deployed and I'd come back and I was training officer candidates to lead soldiers in combat as platoon leaders. Then now we were doing asymmetrical warfare. We were talking about, how to approach the modern battlefield. The Democratic Party has not metaphorically made that shift. And the reason we haven't is because we largely have leadership that doesn't know how to battle in memes, doesn't know how to battle in 20-second clips, doesn't know how to penetrate and get people's attention and cut through. Sometimes they do, but it does not come as naturally to Chuck Schumer as it does to somebody like AOC.
He also, there were certain rationales that Schumer gave where he was like, I hear that Musk really wanted this, which is like, first of all, we're dealing in innuendo here. And two is you just look scared. Like the entire strategy, like basically you're going up against bullies and you're showing them that you're really scared. And I think that we have to, and this is a controversial point and it's not an easy choice, but I think the only way to handle this period of time is to say, all right, like we've accepted that this is going to be a catastrophe. Like we don't want it, but we're not scared to fight you. And we're not scared to take us in places that are really scary for you. The real evidence of like whether Trump and Musk wanted this or not was after Schumer caved. Trump sent a congratulatory truth or tweet or whatever we want to call them, saying, "Hey, like you made the right choice. I look forward to working together."
Look, man, we control nothing, right? We have almost no power, like capital P power, right? But we have influence and we know what they want to do. They're doing it, right? The opportunity that we have, that the only opportunity here that comes with having control over no part of government at the federal level is that you get to be a true opposition party. And you don't have to necessarily, like, you really don't have to go out and make everybody in the coalition happy. You don't have to this should be the easiest time right now, should be the easier even than a presidential election, which seemed like it was the best time for disparate wings of the party to come together. And it mostly did. But the only time easier than that is when you are facing an administration that has unlimited power and is, as Chris Hayes said in that clip we started with, pretty hell-bent on making the presidency into a dictatorship. When that is the case, we should be in a place where the Senate Majority Leader and the furthest progressive members of the House and, podcast hosts and everybody else should very simply be able to get on the same sheet of music. And the only way that doesn't happen is if you are under the illusion that you have power that you do not. And if you don't, if you think that you have power that you do not, then you will operate as though it's business as usual. If you understand that you don't have that power, then you understand that your power is to tell the American people exactly what is being done to them and to do it every day over and over and over again and become an avatar for the American people, to become their voice in the face of all this. But you can't do that when you look like you're trying to be a part of the system that doesn't want you to be a part of it.
Yeah, and we don't have to go through all the clips of Schumer, but he's talking at times, and this is what Hayes was responding to when he said, you're acting as if it's Mitt Romney's president. We don't have enough time to go through all the different things that Schumer has said that seem to indicate that he believes he's at a different time, where he's like, oh, the poll numbers will drop. We did this in 2017. It's like, do you not realize what time it is, Chuck Schumer? Yeah. And the other thing is,
this is the second Death Star, not the first.
Yeah, you need to also realize that you have constituents, and we're your constituents, and you are not explaining yourself really well to us. He's not explaining himself to his members either, and people are fed up with it. And I think this is a test. The last time around, a lot of people, myself included, felt like the party wasn't strident and honest enough early enough when it was obvious that our leaders had passed their expiration dates. We now have a redo of this, and the party really needs to listen and say, all right, like, your constituents are very clear on this. A lot of your members are really clear on this. And this is where, with Chris Murphy, what I would say to Chris Murphy, if he's listening, is you're half honest. Like, you're halfway there. You're saying that you disagree with Schumer, but you still think he should be leader. The question is, like, do you still want to be holding on and supporting a leader who, look, I'm very grateful for all the things Chuck Schumer has done. But can you honestly look your constituents in the eyes and say, this is the best leader we have to move forward? Like, I want to see some of our leaders grow a spine, and even Murphy himself say, all right, I'm throwing my hat in the ring. This is going to be a tough fight, but I'm gonna try to reclaim the mantle here, and try to push a new generation of leadership in the Senate.
In Murphy's defense, a little bit, because I think he does listen. What I will say is, if he's doing that, he's got to do it behind closed doors first, right? Because if you just come out and you become, the public opponent of the leader, then it's just Democrats in disarray again. It doesn't help anybody. But what I think is probably happening is people are starting to approach Schumer and say, hey, it's time for something new. It's time for some kind of new leadership. And what's interesting about that is that, if you recall, that is how Schumer became the leader, because Harry Reid, who was absolutely universally respected as one of the most effective people in that job, folks felt that Harry Reid had sort of he had gone past the point of being able to nimbly handle sort of the new media environment. And Schumer was able to make the case that it was, time for him to step forward, and he was able to do that by working behind the scenes with Reid. I know more about that I can't share because it would divulge confidences, but suffice it to say, that's pretty much what happened. And I would bet that Murphy and others are engaged in that right now. Schumer's put in a lot of time. It makes sense to let him save face. So I think he was as honest as he could be there. You know what I mean? But
look, yeah, I think the question a lot of Americans are asking is like, where's the evidence of change? It's like right. A bad relationship we have with the Democratic Party. It's like, tell me you can change. Show me that you're changing.
Show me what people want, because you and I both get this all the time, is folks that, I can tweet like about the weather, and I will get people just in all caps, do something. And It's like, okay, well, I'm a nonprofit executive from Kansas City. But what they mean, they see us all as one, Democratic establishment. And even with that, it's like, well, we don't, even the folks who are elected to things right now don't have that much power. But what they mean is channel my outrage, mirror my fear and concern, which doesn't mean panic, but it means demonstrate a level of seriousness and urgency that the moment requires. And that is, I think, ultimately why we may very well likely end up with a new leader, because Schumer's not doing that.
Yeah, and that person, whoever that person is, whether it's Murphy, Klobuchar, or whoever, hopefully not Dick Durbin. I love Dick Durbin, but I think everybody should realize that we need a new generation. We need new energy. Whoever that person is going to be will immediately command a lot of attention that could be used to push back, at least on the messaging side of things. Because I think one thing is clear: Schumer's not even persuading us, never mind independents and conservatives. Right. It's not, you can picture Schumer going on Joe Rogan and holding court. Like, it's impossible to even imagine. Like, he can't even go on Chris Hayes and do an effective job. So with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about there's too many horrible things happening this week to cover, but one of them is the combination of deportations and the Trump administration seemingly ignoring court orders. And then there is a autopsy of the 2024 election that caught our attention, and we're going to debate what the data means when we get back.
Life moves fast, and sometimes you just need a way to relax, recharge, or stay focused without overcomplicating things. That's where Via comes in. If you haven't tried them yet, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need to unwind, refocus, or boost your mood, Via is here to enhance your everyday and night. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, Via is changing the game in natural wellness, blending powerful, high-quality, hemp-derived ingredients to deliver real, effect-driven benefits. Whether you're looking to sleep better, have better libido, improve focus, recover, or simply relax, Via has a tailored solution just for you. With products ranging from 0 to high cannabinoid levels, Via lets you fully customize your experience to fit your needs. Whether you're looking to support your daily wellness routine, enhance focus and clarity, or unwind with deep relaxation, Via has you covered. From their award-winning effect-forward gummies to premium indoor-grown THCA flower and calming drops, every Via product is thoughtfully crafted, made with organic, lab-tested, hemp-sourced from trusted, independent, American-owned farms. And the best part, Via legally ships across the USA. Discreet, direct to your door, no medical card required, and backed by a worry-free guarantee. Not sure where to start? Take Via's Product Finder quiz to get personalized recommendations tailored to your needs. It can take you less than 60 seconds to complete. If you're 21 or over, check out the link to Via in our description and use the code MAJORITY to receive 15% off, free shipping on orders over $100, and if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via. You all know how important sleep is to me. That's why I'm obsessed with my Helix mattress. With everything going on in life, from work to demanding social schedule to sports and kids, it's incredibly important to me that I'm getting a good night's sleep every night. My wife can attest. We've had our Helix mattress for over 2 years now, and our sleep quality has improved tremendously. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. So how will you know which Helix mattress works best for you and your body? You take the Helix Sleep Quiz and you find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes. And your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. I took the Helix Sleep Quiz. I was matched with the Midnight Luxe mattress because I wanted something that was sort of medium firm. I also sleep on my side. It is a complete upgrade from my previous mattress that I had over 2 years ago. If I'm tossing and turning all night, Diana doesn't even, wake up at all. It's amazing. Helix knows there's no better way to test out a new mattress than by sleeping on it in your own home. That's why they offer a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. Helix has also been awarded the #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. It's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering 20% off site-wide if you go to helixsleep.com/majority. That's helixsleep.com/majority. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now.
All right. The events of the past week, I think, are best summarized by David Frum, the Never Trumper, who tweeted, Trump claims power to overturn Article 1 of the Constitution, Congress's authority over spending, Article 2, his predecessor's pardon power, and Article 3 by defying a federal court order. Let's talk about that third here. Over the weekend, the Trump administration ignored a federal judge's order not to deport a group of Venezuelan men, violating an instruction that was pretty straightforward. Justice Department lawyers later justified the administration's actions by making some specious legal arguments, and people have been going back and forth here. This prompted Chief Justice John Roberts to issue a statement saying for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. He said, referring to calls on the right to impeach the judge who disagreed with the administration. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. Now, I'll pause here for a second, Jason. He's defending the judge against calls to impeach the judge.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Right.
They're ignoring the judge too. That's the bigger problem.
They're acting as if the judge is just like any other commentator.
They're saying we're not going to ignore you. We're going to say you shouldn't even be a judge because you disagree with this.
Yeah, let's go ahead and watch this clip from Tom Homan, the border czar, on Fox.
It doesn't look like you're getting support from the Democrats on this. You're going against the judges now. What's next?
Another flight. Another flight every day. The teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to the American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
I don't care what the judges think, Jason.
This is officially the scariest part so far for me. I don't know about you.
I think let me pause there because I think this is important. This was the week in which I think we crossed a very important line that I think is going to go down, unfortunately, in American history as an important turning point in this country.
Yeah, it's now we're in constitutional crisis, in my opinion, because people what we forget is that, as has been pointed out many times, and I'm sure, for you also was the first thing they mentioned when you had constitutional law, the Supreme Court has no army. They cannot enforce their rulings. It's like an honor system. The rulings are enforced because everybody mutually agrees that this is how the country works and that this is how the country has to work for the country to continue to be what it is. And we have crossed this kind of thing before. We've had like a civil war. We've had, but this is certainly in our lifetime the furthest across the Rubicon we've ever gone to. What if the administration just says, we don't care what the courts say? The only saving grace, I think the hope here is that, and it's not legal, but the hope is that the administration is sort of saying, well, we have the appellate courts in a lot of places and we have the Supreme Court, so we're not going to take these rulings seriously until it's gone all the way, which, by the way, is completely unconstitutional. I mean, once a ruling has been put in place, you are stayed, you must obey by that ruling. You may appeal, you may stop and try and get a new ruling, but they're just continuing and ignoring the ruling while in the appellate process. And it's not just on this, it's on all sorts of things.
Yeah, here's from a law professor, Professor Huck said, I think it's more useful to say that this is moving us into a completely different kind of constitutional order, one that's no longer characterized by laws that bind officials and that can be enforced. The law, in other words, becomes a tool to harm enemies, not to bind those who govern. That is quite a different constitutional order than the one that we've had for a long time. And here's another quote. This is from Andrew McCarthy, who's a former federal prosecutor writing in the National Review, this is the guy who generally defends the Trump administration and the sort of MAGA world, but under the cover of like acceptability, politics within sort of former DOJ officials. This is what Andrew McCarthy said in the National Review, mind you. He says it should go without saying that at the Justice Department, the rule of the road is that in the absence of a true emergency, the government complies with judicial orders, even if the orders are patently lawless, until it can get them reversed, either by the issuing judge or a higher court. It's all right to complain bitterly about court orders, but they are not to be ignored, much less knowingly flouted. He said the government seems to be intentionally instigating fireworks. That seems like a terrible legal strategy, but it may be winning politics, at least for a little while. So that's even what the National Review is saying at this point. Not that anybody's going to listen.
They're ignoring court orders. They're ignoring laws. I mean, like there are, I know I'm a broken record about this, but it's a good example. There are thousands of refugees waiting whose flights were ready to come to the United States and Afghanistan and elsewhere that aren't just like a program that existed under Biden. There are laws in place passed by Congress, signed by the president that say you have to let those people in, that these programs are, legally binding statutory programs that are funded and that exist, and that you, the executive, must execute these programs. And they're just like, no, they're just shutting them down, pretending those laws don't exist. And now when there are court orders saying, no, actually you have to do it, they're like, we just won't. And I genuinely don't know what happens then.
I think this country is in big trouble, Jason. And we're going to talk in a little bit about this autopsy, right? And one of the things that's going to come out in the autopsy data is that the electorate wasn't really moved by rule of law arguments this time around. And I've been thinking about that a lot. And I'm like, well, we're not, as I said before the election, we're not operatives, right? You and I are just talk about what it is, why we vote, why we supported Harris and didn't support Trump, and why we were alarmed by Trump. And I can only go back and sincerely say, like, the reason why every step of the way this has been the number one motivation for me and what I've talked about on this podcast is because this seemed very obviously likely based on everything Trump did and said. And I'm sorry that isn't more persuasive to the electorate. It really bums me out. But it honestly was the worst thing about this administration, because it is the gateway to everything else, right? Because what are we talking about, right? At a substantive level, there are a lot of different policies that this disregard for the rule of law allows. So for instance, if you, like me, believe in a common humanity and an organized asylum process that allows people to escape persecution and to have some form of due process before we kick them out of this country, well, then their disregard of the law allows them to commit malicious harm against people seeking asylum in this country. Tim Miller on the Bulwark was talking about the other day of this Venezuelan who, we can only go off of what the lawyer for this person was saying. We don't obviously know because it hasn't been adjudicated, because the Trump administration won't give this person due process, but they claim that they are a member of the gay community in Venezuela escaping persecution. And the lawyer is saying that they lost contact with their client who was picked up in the United States, and then was eventually notified that that person is in a flight to El Salvador. Okay.
Which is not where they're from.
Not where they're from. And the Trump administration is providing video of these people who they're showing gang members, which I have no doubt there are actual gang members and innocent people commingled together. So they're showing these videos of these tatted up people who, Lord knows who they are, being handed over to Venezuelan authorities and being dumped in prisons that look like these dystopian nightmare prisons that, you would, that the Hanoi Hilton style places that you would make a movie about. And it is very obviously likely that innocent people are being mixed up in this, alongside gang members who are already incarcerated in the United States, to be clear, right? So there was no need to fast forward to steamroll due process for the safety of American people here. This was just a stunt to win over voters who the Trump administration wants to, believe that they're moving fast on the border and standing tough on crime, right? That's the messaging that they want, and they're so confident in this that they're videoing their own actions and disregarding the court.
because their calculation is that there's the politics of action and decisiveness, and that no matter what they do, that after many, many years of a certain level of gridlock and partisan, back and forth in Washington, that being effective will be popular. They might be right, but what that means is that we have to be on one sheet of music, and we can't just be whining and complaining and saying this is not fair. We can't sound like we're complaining about the rules. We have to say he is breaking the law. Every single day he's breaking the law, that he is flouting the founders, that he is doing everything that the founders said, warned us about, right? And there's a way to do this that doesn't sound alarmist, but just sounds realistic. And to just go one by one and say, these are the things that the Congress or the courts have told the president he does not have the power to do, and he is doing anyway. And then you have to say, like, regardless of whether that is something you want done, that is not how America is supposed to work, and it's very dangerous. And there's plenty of examples where you can talk about how dangerous it is. There's plenty of things that are deeply unpopular that he's doing, where you can talk about going around the system to do it, because it all leads to rising prices. It leads to volatility. It leads to all these things. And I do think there's a difference between in the campaign when we had to sound like we were the sky is falling, versus saying the sky is falling. Not the sky might fall. And I think that there's a right way to do that.
Yeah, it's at a certain point, we need to start thinking about civil disobedience at a whole different level, right? Like my family comes from the Gandhian movement. And at a certain point, we need to start saying, if you're going to disregard the law, we're going to disregard the law, and we're going to have to instigate you into very aggressive enforcement measures on your own. So, for example, states need to start considering completely going in non-compliance with the federal government, like those kinds of actions. Like we need to really push them to the brink here, even to the point where even things like TSA, like in flights over a state, like we just need to just completely shut down people's ability to carry out routine action, which is why I'm on AOC side on the government. Like we need to push them into.
You went on mute, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
You lost your mic. The problem with only fighting with rhetoric and warning and not having civil disobedience is it doesn't create any discomfort, and it doesn't require people to come out of a bubble where they don't have to deal with it, right? And that's absolutely where we are, and it is concerning, but I mean, more than concerning. The good news is we still have elections, and there is no indication whatsoever, because it is also decentralized and controlled at the state and county level, that they're in any position to stop that from happening, which is our great piece of leverage, which is that what they're doing is actually quite unpopular. And if you go online and look for focus groups of Trump voters, there are plenty of them who feel like what he's doing, even if they're wrong, they feel like what he's doing are not the things he said he was going to do, because that's the way Trump rolled for so long, is he said a bunch of stuff and then he didn't do it. Well, that was before he was, in a term. He can't run again. He's pretty old. It's, he's not thinking about what happens next at all. He's doing whatever he wants. And people are like, whoa, we never thought that would actually happen. And it's going to cause them to second guess it. And now what we have to do is we have to transfer that culpability politically to people like Musk, who will be a part of this no matter what when Trump moves on, and assign motive, and say this is why they're doing it. They're just stripping the government for parts to enrich themselves.
Well, with that, let's move on to this autopsy. So David Shore is.
Before we do that, let's take a quick break. And then
yeah,
we'll come back, because we actually have 2 ad breaks today. So we'll come back and we'll do the autopsy and talk about the state of the Democratic Party. Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk growing kids should never eat. That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved, super-powered, chewable vitamin. While most children's vitamins are filled with 5 grams of sugar and can contribute to a variety of health issues, Hiya is made with 0 sugar and 0 gummy junk, yet it tastes great and it's perfect for picky eaters, i.e. kids. Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste that they love. Formulated with the help of nutritional experts, Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, concentration, teeth, bones, and more. It's non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, allergy-free, gelatin-free, nut-free, and everything else that you can imagine. Hiya is designed for kids of all ages and sent straight to your door so parents have one less thing to worry about. As you know, I'm a father, and I'm always on the lookout for the best possible vitamins for my child to take. I'm so happy that I've come across Hiya Health. The ingredients are amazing, and I don't have to worry about sugar or gummy junk because Hiya Health is made without that stuff and is still able to keep the great taste, which is super important because that's how you get kids to eat it. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/majority. This deal is not available on the regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/majority and get your kids the full body nourishment that they need to grow into healthy adults.
All right, Jason, they're making me move rooms, so I'm gonna have to tee you up here.
Okay, no problem. I'll get it.
Let me quickly just give you my 2 cents on this, which is David Shore appeared on Ezra Klein. He's a Democratic data guru, and essentially laid out what are some really alarming statistics about this past election.
All right, I'll run through these while you switch rooms. Okay, so Hispanic moderates, Democratic support fell from 81% in 2016 to 8 years later, 58% in 2024. Among Black conservatives, Democratic support dropped from 85% in 2016 to 77% in 2024. Among Hispanic conservatives, it fell by half, 34% in 2016 to 17% in 2024. Asian conservatives, there's a theme here. We're talking about, the demographics that for the longest time, ideology aside, a lot of liberals believed that these demographics were a destiny and we could sort of count on them. Among Asian conservatives, it dropped from 28% 8 years ago to 20% now. Among young voters, which are traditionally very strong for Democrats, but younger men, particularly white and non-white men under 26, shifted big time toward Trump. Immigrants, writ large, went from a Biden plus 27 in 2020 to a Trump plus 1 in 2024. The polarization among, class based on education continues, that highly educated voters continue to move to the left. Working class voters, including non-white working class voters, are shifting right. Basically meaning, like, when I was a kid growing up, what a Democrat was is now what a Republican is, and vice versa, right? The shift among the less politically engaged voters in 2020, coming up running for office, it was always like, hey, we do better in presidential years because more of our people show up, because we do better with the less engaged voters. That's clearly the opposite now. In 2020, non-voters leaned slightly Democratic. By 2024, non-voters leaned heavily Republican, and Trump won them by double digits. Voters who consume less traditional media, like TV, newspapers, they were significantly more likely to vote for Trump. The turnout dynamics changed. If only the 2022 midterm voters had voted in 2024, Harris would have won. If everyone had voted, Trump would have won the popular vote by 5 points. Higher turnout no longer benefits Democrats. It now favors Republicans. Some of the key issues that mattered to voters: cost of living and inflation, overwhelmingly the top concern. We knew that. Crime, immigration, economy, national security, areas where Republicans had major trust advantages. And then we thought democracy and January 6th were going to be huge. We harped on it a lot. It ranked low in importance compared to economic concerns. And same, abortion and climate change, issues where Democrats had an advantage, but they turned out not to be priorities for most voters. We can keep going. But, what it all leads to is that, if you go back to the conversation we were having at the beginning of this, it's that the Democratic Party is in a place where it's got really one of the lowest approvals in forever. Now is my screen frozen? That's hilarious. You're back. My audio still works. But now we're at a place where really we're in a perfect spot for a reset because the party is in such a bad place in terms of its approval. I'm going to come out and go back. You start talking.
Yeah, I think oops. Now my mic is malfunctioning. It's a comedy of errors today. The question is, what do you do? Well, there's not much to do yet. We're not in the middle of too many elections, although, as we'll talk about, we've got Wisconsin coming up next week, and then we're going to quickly pivot to the midterms. So I think the question is, how do you collect this data, use it to have the right kind of internal conversations that the party needs to have? And I think the data really is for people gearing up for the next series of elections, and then the people who, like you and I, or other major podcasts and TV commentators and writers, to think about, all right, what assumptions are we making about our coalition? And I think this data is helpful because often people make claims about what it is, quote unquote, that these communities want. And I think Democrats have gotten themselves in trouble by listening to a very selective few series of people who claim to speak for certain audiences. And I think what we're learning in the data is that the average person in this country, no matter what their demographics, have soured on certain parts of the Democratic messaging and or turned towards Trump. And I think of all the data points here, the different communities of color, et cetera, it's the young people data that worries me the most. The fact that young people are turning so overwhelmingly in terms of trends towards the other side at a time when we're used to talk about demographics being destiny, both in terms of the racial makeup of this country, but also the fact that young people, as they get older, will give Democrats a significant advantage. That's the scariest part of this data.
I think here's my silver lining to all of this. You've been saying, and I think this really, underlines your point. You've been saying for a while that the next leaders of the Democratic Party will run against the Democratic Party, including probably the nominee in 28. And I think that's right. The last time that the Democratic Party had an approval rating this low was 92. And who did we elect? We elected Bill Clinton, who was running against the Democratic Party, right? And so if there's a silver lining here, it is that this should get across to us that it is not simply a matter of putting together the right coalition. There's no shortcut. You have to simplify, and then you have to persuade. And that means that you don't have the luxury of doing what so many of our campaigns have tried to do too often for so many years, which is have tailor-made messages for different parts of the coalition. We don't have the clip, but I did see this morning where Chris Murphy said something, I think on the Daily Show, that really rang true with me. He said that we have gotten addicted to the idea that we don't have to do anything about the rigged economy if we find ways to compensate specific groups of people. And what's interesting about that is it really echoes, in a way, a Republican criticism of the Democratic Party, because the other way to say that is free stuff. And that's what the Republicans love to say. Liberals just want to give away free stuff. Well, it's not as simple as that. But what Murphy is saying is we've been trying to create benefits for individual groups and show them that we have their back. And we've been putting off the task of saying this whole thing is rigged. It's not fair. Whereas you've had the Bernie Sanderses of the world going out and saying, and Elizabeth Warren and AOC and people like that, and saying this is rigged. It's not fair. And I would point out in a different way, but it allowed him to capture some of these people. In 2016, you had Trump saying it. And again, in every election, him saying it's rigged against you. Now, he's the rooster coming into or he's the fox coming into the hen house to say so, but he's still saying it. And we really weren't. And I hope that that's what this does, is it gets us to say, you know what? We need to reimagine our entire, not our policies, but reimagine our entire argument. I mean, our policies too. We have to think bigger.
Yeah, you might remember this, but during the midterm election in 2022, I went down to Pennsylvania and I was talking to Latino business owners who are like, I'm sick of the party treating me like a fantasy of like what an immigration activist would want. I'm a small business owner first, and here's what I know. They're trying to raise my taxes, the Democrats, and trying to increase regulation on my business. And so I'm not with them, right? I think about this in New York City, where you talk about paying off constituencies. New York City, we have these low turnout elections, and the Democrats are really good at finding these little interest groups that show up and will turn their people out and paying those people off through lucrative contracts, protections,
patronage elections.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's racial groups and going to the right leaders who speak for a certain amount of people, and what the average New Yorker is left thinking about, and Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson wrote a pretty good book about this, about how places like New York and California are losing their ability to govern. It's the average New Yorker, and it's not just people like me. It's even people like street vendors who are shaken down. It's like the average New Yorker feels like they're being treated like an ATM machine and that they're being ignored in the politics unless they're part of some larger, powerful constituency that has the ear of the right Democratic boss. That's the kind of stuff we need to change. Is it equivalent to anything we just talked about in terms of what this administration is doing? No. But these are the kind of questions we need to ask if we want to win elections in the future and show people that we can govern well.
Yeah, we cannot be tempted to simply make the argument about going back to when things were not as chaotic, when it wasn't as scary and that kind of thing. That won us the election in 2020. There was a pandemic going on, but that won us the election in 2020. It was an adequate argument to win us the election. But you cannot motivate a party that is built on progress by saying, we'll make it like it was. Okay. You can motivate a party like the Republican Party that's built on some idealized idea of the past by saying, let's make it like it was. But you can't do that with the Democratic Party. It won't work. One doesn't jive with the other, which means this midterm election and the presidential election cannot be an argument about going back to a calmer time. It has to be a clash of visions, not even ideas, not even policies, visions. The Trump and the Republicans have made really clear they're executing on their vision, right? It is authoritarianism, and it is speed, and it is oligarchy in a lot of ways. And our vision has to be different. Our vision has to be one about fairness, and it has to be, I mean, honestly, a lot more socialist in a lot of ways, because that's how we got to embrace terms like, redistribution of wealth away from billionaires and to people who work for a living. We have to really go at the establishment because they have the entire establishment right now.
Well, on a more optimistic note, we've got an election on Tuesday in Wisconsin for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And for folks listening, if you're in Wisconsin, make sure you vote. If you're outside of Wisconsin, consider giving to Judge Crawford. This is Judge Crawford, our candidate, speaking about the influence of outside interests like Musk in the election.
And I'll just point out that Tesla filed a lawsuit against the state of Wisconsin within days of the inauguration and within days of Elon Musk beginning to spend millions of dollars, mostly in attack ads against me and in paid canvassers who are going door to door in Wisconsin saying things like, or handing out leaflets that say things like support the Trump agenda. Elon Musk's interest in this race is really clear, and it's not because he cares about people in the state of Wisconsin.
I mean, that's the point here. Like, whenever you talk about Musk or any of these people, you've got to talk about motive. It's just like a court case. You can't just say, well, they fractured this law. You've got to talk about motive. You've got to say why. You have to assign the motive to it.
Well, Jason, on
All
one
right.
for us, you
Sure.
just had surgery.
Yes, I did. Today is Wednesday. I had surgery on Friday for a inguinal sports hernia. I was, as I talked about last week, I was very anxious about, going under and that kind of thing. I hadn't done it in a long time. The folks at St. Luke's here in Kansas City, including my anesthesiologist, my surgeon, all the nurses, everybody, they did great about it. They were really awesome about it. Diana was super supportive, and it ended up being very smooth, as I knew it would, but it ended up, not being such a negative experience. And so then now I'm on day 5, and this is, the first day that I felt like, okay, I might turn a corner here. It was frankly more painful and uncomfortable, the recovery from surgery, than I imagined or than I expected. But Diana's been great, and having to, in addition to the 2 kids, having to, help me with everything. So here I am. I'm now I'm a couple weeks out from being able to start really exercising again, and we'll see.
Well, I'm glad you're on the road to recovery.
Yeah, I got to make it to St. Louis in like a week and a half to sit with you and hawk this very good book.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's I'm heading back to New York this weekend to do a couple of events, and yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see this thing finally make it out there.
I tell you what, I've been laying on my butt for the last few days for nothing to do, so I've been consuming all sorts of content. Like I finally got around. Diana and I now are like, I think 8 episodes into Landman. Have you seen that show? It's in the Taylor Sheridan universe. It's the latest thing. It's about a general manager of an oil company played by Billy Bob Thornton. And dude, I would watch Billy Bob Thornton just read the phone book. And he's so entertaining. It's so good. I'm now a couple episodes into this documentary on Netflix, Surviving Black Hawk Down. So I've just been.
I saw you were watching the MTV Unplugged. Was that right?
Yeah. When I'm just sitting there doing work on my phone or my computer, laying on my back, I think the Unplugs are on Amazon. I just put on the ones that I'm old enough now. I remember when they aired, like Nirvana, Eric Clapton.
I love the Alice in Chains. I don't know if you were into that one.
Oh, I haven't watched that one.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Yeah.
I'll go back and do that. So, Drew, go around that way, buddy. Drew's been sitting here playing Xbox the whole time we've been streaming today. So, all right, go buy Ravi's book. Come see Ravi and I talk about it. Again, on Tuesdays, Ravi and I have a new show on Valor Media Network. It's The Game Within. It's about the business and politics of sports. Streams live at 3:30 Central on Tuesdays. Thanks very much for listening to us. Don't despair. Things are not great, but there's a lot of room left to fight, and there's a lot of baseball left to play, as they say. So please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.